So, welcome everybody. This is your new and improved staff meeting experience. We want to keep the focus on experience. I was just saying to Crispin, who I'll introduce shortly, that this is the product of the people. This is not an HR initiative. This is the initiative, I'm going to say, of the whole of Cornerstone. I know not everybody could attend on the 31st of May. We met in the Lecturers' Common and we had a popcorn session, which literally meant that we sat like this, very, I want to say disorganized. What felt to me a little less organized, a little less structured. And everybody just gave ideas as to what they want this staff meeting to be about and to be like. So whatever you asked for, we brought today in terms of connection, connectivity, and all of those kind of things. I also did promise at the end of that session that we wouldn't be able to give you everything that was on the board on one particular session. So we're going to, what you see today, if you had your hand up, I can't see Roxanne here. I can't see a couple of the faces who actually made suggestions, but if you feel, you will recognize what you asked for on that flip chart. And if you're not seeing it today, fear not. The following meetings or the following meeting experiences will have a lot of that captured. So without much further ado, in terms of connectivity and connectedness, I'm going to ask Marianne to join us.
Okay, so we'll stand in a circle. I wonder if Adelia and Marika, if you can just quickly help me to do a demonstration. So each circle will have a ball of string. And wait, let me start with me, that's easier. So there'll be more people. No, you stand there because we're a circle. We look like a triangle, but we're a circle. And so it will start with one person who'll make a statement about themselves. Anything that's true about you. So let's say I have a son. Who else does? And Adelia says she. So I keep my end of the string and she catches it, and now the ball is in her court, and she makes another statement about herself.
I like jumping into ice baths.
And let's say Marika also does, for the purpose of demonstration. And so it continues. So you keep your end of the string, and the game continues until we stop it. And at the end, we'll talk a bit about what we experience. So if you ask a question and you've got 3 people putting up their hands, me too, choose someone who hasn't participated yet. So if Adelia is already holding a string and I'm not, throw the little ball to me. So that I can also participate and ask a question. All right, so we'll give it depending on the time and ask and say interesting things, not too interesting. And if you've been to the moon, that question won't help a lot because I doubt that anybody else has been to the moon in this room. But let's not stick to just very traditional stuff. Think of fears. Think of what you love. I eat my ice cream warmed up. Okay, that might also not be a very general one. But I'm afraid of spiders or heights or whatever. I've been to this or that place. So please form your groups. We'll be equipping you with a string, and then you can start. 5 groups. Thank you, everybody. Just remain where you are and how you are. What has happened in your groups? If you look, don't think about what was asked and answered. Look at the picture. What do you see? Connection, a network. You're all connected. Even people that you didn't know so well when you entered into this exercise, you now see you are connected with. And even people that you didn't think you had a lot in common with, now you see that you do. So in a way, we are not similar to everybody else in Cornerstone, but we have things in common with just about everyone. And together we form a network. What Cornerstone value or values do you think does this depict? Unity? Inclusivity? Yes, definitely. And what would happen if someone dropped their part? Everything will collapse. So it's important that we remain engaged, that we remain part of this unity. We don't withdraw or go and sit in our little corner. We bring our unique self, which can be connected to every single other person in your team, in your department, in Cornerstone. So this was just a fun exercise to see how we all connected. You can now lay down your nice networks, and we'll come and pick them up. But thank you so much for participating in this. It's been a lot of fun, and I've heard something about pole dancing, and I don't know what else. So, yeah, very informative.
Okay. And just to add, we don't have water bubbles around the office. Or maybe we do, I'm not sure. But these are, don't we have water bubbles? Not fancy it, okay. So, well, whether you're around the fridge or whether you're walking down the passage, try and remember the stuff that you guys have in common so that you don't feel like, oh, I got nothing to say to Paula today, so I'm just going to mosey on faster. There's always something to speak about. So I want to call issues. Jeanette, welcome back to Cornerstone. You might, if you attended the Women in Leadership event last year at about this time, you will remember Jeanette. You will not remember Crispin because Crispin is here for the first time today. There's Crispin over there. He'll introduce himself shortly. Jeanette, I'm going to read this. I'm going to do my best, but Jeanette will give you a better explanation of what's going on over here. So I have, so the Leadership Circle profile is going to help us answer the following question. Perhaps not today, but that's where we're aiming for. How are my behaviors and mindset enabling or constraining my intended leadership impact? So you can come to work and you can have an intention to lead. Something goes wrong and then you can't. And then you're really upset with the people behind you or around you, that kind of thing. The other thing that could happen is that maybe you're just not getting along and you don't know why. Okay. But it's about curiosity and about asking the right questions. Okay, and then I wanted to just say also something I got off the internet, Jeanette. So the LCP, or the Leadership Circle profile, reflects and synthesizes a diverse body of scientific research. Blaine, we've got you. We continue to evolve the LCP to remain the leading edge and global standard in assessment methodology. And then we have a little quote here from the Institute for Psychological Research and Application. And they say that the LCP is an internally consistent, valid measure for leadership development, and the psychometric properties of LCP are strong. So I think what I'm trying to say is it's a very special piece of work, a very special piece of contribution that Jeanette and Crispin brings.
Thank you. Let me just test quickly. Thank you, everyone, and welcome. No, I'm not going to be just telling you about a psychometric tool. What we're going to do is experience the tool. So there's going to be a little bit of chaos as we go along today, but that's going to be, all just part of the learning experience. So the first question I'd like to ask you, if we just have a look up front, when we talk about leaders or leadership in this context, how many of you think about other people? There are people in senior capacity roles, and those are the leaders of Cornerstone. Just show of hands. How many of you think when we say leaders or leadership say, yes, that's me. There are only two options you're being given. So it's either A or B. Shall we try it again? First answer, them, those, senior executive, there are people in the role of leadership. Hands up. And the second answer is, when I hear leaders or leadership, I say, that's me. So today's chat that we're going to have together is all about you stepping into those shoes today and saying, I am a leader and I have impact and create value. So what we want you to do today is spend a little bit of time for you to unlock that leadership potential within you, stepping into those shoes. May I use the example when I heard earlier, somebody was sitting in the back, and when I said, why are you sitting in the back? They said, I am just an intern. And the first thing we needed to respond by saying is, please eliminate the word just. I am an intern. It's a season. It's for a period of time. I am not just an employee in Cornerstone. I am a leader, maybe in a different capacity. I am part of Cornerstone. And I think that's really what we're wanting to spend a little bit of time on. For us to be able to step into those shoes, there's a couple of little guidelines and principles we're going to do. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and just give you a couple of moments in your smaller groups to just chat to each other for a couple of minutes, just to set context. And then we're going to do what we call walk the mat. And this is the mat. And then we'll start just understanding a little bit about walk the mat and what that actually means for us. There's been a beautiful reference in the exercise that you've done to connectivity. How are we connected together? And we'll bring that theme through back into the exercise as we go along. All right, so let's just quickly visualize quickly and just give ourselves a background, a little bit of perspective. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, in your groups, just visualize. Right now, just go quiet, spend a little bit of time and say, if I have a look at Cornerstone, visualize Cornerstone next level, whether it be 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. What does Cornerstone look like for you? And the question I'm asking you to share in your group is, what does it look like? What does it feel like to your community that you serve, to the students, learners, delegates, participants, whatever the right terminology is that you prefer using, to your colleagues, to leadership, to the investors of Cornerstone, and then as well as to you. What does this future Cornerstone actually look and feel like? Just visualize quickly and share it with each other. I'm just going to give you 5 minutes to do that. So I just want you to paint a picture first of this future Cornerstone. All right? Just for a couple of minutes. All right, great. Let's ask each group to give us just one word or one statement or something that helps us to see this picture of what future Cornerstone looks like. Where shall we start? Can we start in the group at the back?
Hi. What is the name of our group again? So the winning team, yes. So for us, I think we agreed that the cornerstone that we want is actually satisfaction across board from students and staff wellness. Some mention money, housing, but but anyway. But actually satisfaction, colleagues, students, because those are the most important kind of bodies for Cornerstone.
Thank you. And in this group?
Yeah, so I think ours was kind of just community. So like creating a vibrant community and really pushing that as the goal that we want to work toward.
So, in one word, I think we say prosperous and like both like a family who's like-minded in thinking.
An institution of choice.
Ours was growth, but we also spoke about identity, where people belong, and flexibility in a global environment, and that linked us back to growth again. So.
Yeah, the global footprint is very, very important.
We can't sum it up in just one word, but what we imagine is an open community where the youth of this area can come to and feel at home and feel like they can learn and grow.
Thank you, everyone. Some wonderful contributions, but if we had to tie them together and paint sort of one picture, we're looking at connectivity, we're looking at prosperity, we're looking at a happy place, a joyful place where people can come together, grow and learn. We're looking at community, we're looking at global footprint, we're looking at expanding, but a lot of interconnectivity amongst everyone, whether it be students, ourselves as employees, the leaders, the community. And so we're really looking at Cornerstone having a place in the future and making a local and global contribution to society as a whole. Are we happy with that as a summary of where we're seeing ourselves going? So our next question we're going to ask ourselves is, how are we, not them, those people, investors, anyone else, but how are we going to contribute towards us being able to move in a direction for that to happen? And whatever vision or picture any organization anywhere these days, public, private, wherever, whatever vision we set out for ourselves, we can look at systems, procedures, processes, technology, tools, resources, and a whole lot of things that we believe will enable us to get there. But ultimately, it is going to be about the leadership in terms of how we get there. And we talk about two elements of that we're going to investigate a little bit today. For us to have that impact, to create value, to realize and materialize some of the vision that we have, it takes for us as leaders to think about self-leadership and to talk about collective leadership. So what we're going to do is just unpack those two terms in our groups a little bit, and then from there onwards go into, but how do we do this ourselves as such? So if we had to kick off with this, and we spoke about self-leadership, just quickly in your groups, just a couple of minutes again, maybe 3 minutes, when we talk about self-leadership, what does that mean to you? What are the most critical components that come out? What does that mean to you? All right, great. Could we have a couple of contributions? We might not necessarily go to every single group, but when we talk and we think about self-leadership, what, could we just have a couple of hands up or just a couple of contributions? What does self-leadership mean to you? Let's get a couple of braves.
So self-leadership to us means accountability and mostly being assertive and responsibility as well.
Hi. So we spoke about three things. We mentioned having self-discipline, self-love, and also having boundaries. So if you yourself don't have boundaries and discipline and care for yourself, you will allow others to do as they please. So you have to set the example.
We spoke about leadership of the collective is being the change you want to see, being accountable, being responsible, and being authentic.
Was it my question? Oh. My question was on pondering about the self-leadership and thinking what it is and understanding it to myself. To me, when I wake up in the morning, my plan is to regulate myself, to lead myself, oneself. And that reflection takes place as I wake and get about my thoughts to plan and strategize, to think what is my purpose and how I will implement and execute that. Now, the question was, if that is self-leadership, how does one identify what the collective would be and whether that is altruistic or not in the purpose of the leadership sense itself?
Right, yes. Sometimes the question is asked like, self-leadership, does that mean I am selfish? Is this all about me? And yet if you look at most of your thought leaders and we talk about self-leadership, the first thing you think about is that leadership is an inside-out job, not an outside-in job. So self-leadership is, yes, when I am able to focus on the me so that when I lead to the outside, that I have the capacity to do that. So when we look at self-leadership, if you look at some of your greater thought leaders around that, and just hook on to some of the answers that you gave us, is that when we talk about self-leadership, we are talking about you defining, we've heard purpose, being grounded and so forth. Self-leadership is about firstly really being comfortable with yourself in terms of who you are. And that comfortableness allows you to be real and authentic and vulnerable and being who you are, and then leading from a place of integrity as to who you are. And that then enables you to be able to lead outside. But if you're not yet comfortable leading from within, then how you project yourself, how you connect, how you relate to people is then influenced by the extent to which you're actually comfortable within who you are as such. It's that being able to say right at the beginning where we said, I am a leader. Not I have a role in a particular and therefore I don't qualify for leadership. It doesn't matter what level you are within an organization or where you position yourself within a community or within a family as such, you have the potential to demonstrate everything about leadership in whichever situation you are. But that starts with you, one, recognizing that you are a leader and then feeling comfortable with it, within who you are. So if you have a look at some of the work of Andrew Bryan, just ask yourself this. There are three sort of nice pillars that you can put all of the other principles into and just ask yourself. The first one about self-leadership is self-awareness, or you can call it consciousness or self-knowledge. But the first part about that is how comfortable are you with how well you know yourself, the true you. And that comes through feedback and reflection and being comfortable with who you actually are, knowing what are your strengths, knowing what are some of the things you might not be that great at, knowing some of the lovely characteristics that you have, and then knowing some of the little bit of the dark side of yourself, but actually getting to know who you truly are in different circumstances and different situations. And essentially what you're saying to yourself is, one, in self-leadership, I know who I am. And then when we look at the second part is once you become more and more aware of who you are, we're then looking at self-confidence. And self-confidence is your ability to say that I'm okay, perfect in all my imperfections. I'm okay. So it means becoming aware of yourself, acknowledging those strengths and those great things, being aware of the things where you might not be that great at all. Some of the issues that might come to the fore where you're saying, I'm not 100% comfortable, that is so fantastic, but I accept myself unconditionally and without judgment for who I am. I'm okay, perfect in all my imperfections. That's part of self-leadership, is being able to acknowledge yourself for who you are. And then the third part of that is the self-efficacy. And that is when you say, I've got this. I can do life. I can be in different circumstances. I can be in difficult situations. But I can draw upon the knowledge that I have of myself, and I can draw upon the confidence in my ability to be able to do things. And therefore, I can deal with changes, disruption, and things that come our way. That's how we start building our perseverance, our adaptability muscles, our ability to deal with life as difficult circumstances come our way. And that's really when we're looking at this is what self-leadership is all about. I'm on a continual journey of getting to know myself better. Remember, every different interaction you have, every different circumstance you find yourself in, every different environment, situation, scenario you find yourself in is an opportunity to learn more about yourself. You don't know how you're going to handle certain circumstances until they get to you. You can try and plan, pre-plan things, but you get into a situation and then you learn more about yourself, because then you learn how you respond and react to that situation and that scenario, and then you identify certain things about yourself. So you're continuously learning. You never really know yourself 100%, but your willingness to learn, to become more self-aware. But then that comfortable feeling of it's okay. Whatever I discover more about myself, it's okay, because it's part of me on the journey of getting to know myself more. But I'm confident in my abilities. I'm confident that what I've been given and what I have, I will be able to make a difference, have impact, create value, and I will be able to do life or do situations or handle problem situations. I can draw upon that. And that is part of, we've heard the words regulating, knowing. I mean, once you know your strengths and once you know some of the weaknesses or areas for development, once you're aware of them, the beauty of that is consciousness. Once I know, I get angry easily. I don't get now to just say, well, sorry, I'm an angry person. But I get to, through self-discovery, say, I work collectively within a team. How do I work with this that's beneficial for all of us around? And that's what we're wanting to do as we move here. So the question I'm going to ask you to just ponder on for a minute. This is like an individual reflection. So it's just like a 1 minute. And that is to say, what if I look at self-leadership and I look at this vision or this picture that we've painted for Cornerstone, and I look at who am I, do I have purpose? Do I know what my purpose is? Do I know what my strengths are? Or what are my areas for development? Am I comfortable and confident in who I am, in this role that I have within the Cornerstone environment? And if I'm comfortable that I can handle situations and what comes my way, and I look at this vision and this picture of what we said we would like to see a Cornerstone to be, what is my contribution? How will I have impact? How will I create value? What could my Cornerstone legacy be as I integrate self-leadership, who I am, into Cornerstone and what Cornerstone stands for and what we're wanting to achieve locally and globally and within our community? What is my Cornerstone legacy? What is my contribution that I would make? Just a moment, sort of reflection in terms of that. So how do I tie where we'd like to see Cornerstone and what I could contribute towards that picture. And so what we're going to do with self-leadership over here when we get to the mat is we're going to play around a little bit with, well, how do we acknowledge then some of those strengths that we bring, and how do I identify some of those areas that we might want to work a little bit on in terms of how we then relate to people. And then I'd like to ask you a question, which I'm going to ask you, take a minute or two now in your groups. If we spoke about self-leadership, and really we've done a snapshot here in a couple of minutes, if we focus on self-leadership and we're saying leadership starts inside out, and I'm going to focus and give attention to who I am and then how I relate into Cornerstone. If we talk about collective leadership, what does that mean? I just want to give you 2 minutes or so within your group to come up with that key phrase or that key word that would describe collective leadership. What does that mean? All right, thank you. Which group is going to give us the first contribution? Here we go.
Collaboration.
Collaboration, great.
So we believe that it's working together so that we can do more for the organization.
We just have a short slogan: unity in diversity.
Haven't had a contribution from this side.
A network of like-minded people.
Like-minded.
Drawing on people's strengths.
Ah, that's a wonderful one. Was there someone wanting to contribute here? I think that's a lovely one to actually move on to, and that is focusing on other people's strengths. We've seen unity in diversity, right? We've looked at collaboration. It's interesting, the principle of collective leadership is sometimes understood. Sometimes people think collective leadership just means, for non-profits like NGOs just trying to do a little bit of community work as such. The principle of collective leadership in business, in organization, in a collective grouping to achieve a particular objective is really something now that when it receives focus in an organization really can facilitate a change in the way that the organization actually operates. Because we are different, we do have individually different objectives and goals, but when we are together within an organizational context, when we not put aside, but when we acknowledge the greater good of the intent of the collective that we are in, and we are willing to work with those diversities, those differences, but yet to find the commonality, that common objective, that common goal together. And through our self-leadership, we're able to use that as a collective. We're able to achieve so much more than when individual leaders attempt to try and just make a decision together in a meeting and then try to implement it. When there is a collective leadership is about taking it to that very, very next level. And the last comment that was made that referred to being able to grow and I would like to use the word amplify our strengths collectively. That's when the formula of 1 + 1, which normally would be 2, or in fact, if you look at the work of Scaling Leadership by Robert J. Anderson, he talks about 1 + 1 equals less than 2. Because you could get a group of leaders that the way that they actually operate diminishes the organization and doesn't amplify the organization. And so what we wanting to focus on is how do I be the best me that I can be, self-leadership, and then how do I be part of the whole Cornerstone leadership in such a way that 1 + 1 is 3 or 5 or to the power of magnitude that we can achieve the picture and the vision that we set for Cornerstone. And that is not who are the few people in the top of the organization that does that, but how do we as a whole leadership body actually work collectively in a positive way towards that. And so for that, I just want to show you a couple of the sort of definitions that support it, that collective leadership is dependent on the relationships between the human parts of any system. It's not the tools and all of those things, but it is the quality of the relationships and how those relationships actually work. It becomes possible when the members of the group, motivated by a common purpose, build relationships with each other that are genuinely respectful and then allow you to co-craft, co-construct your purpose and then work together. So if we think about that, what could a collective leadership look and feel like in Cornerstone? I remember we're talking way beyond here job titles and rank and official. We're not denying any of those things per se, but we're just saying when we're as a whole Cornerstone body, recognize all of the contributions we can make in our different types of leadership capacities. Collectively, we can actually move forward so much better together. The question I would ask you is, as an individual, remember when I asked you the question around what is the impact and the value you can create as an individual? What is the legacy you'd like to leave? What is your Cornerstone legacy? Whatever it might be, whether it's a year from now or 2 years or 5 years from now, what is the legacy you leave behind in terms of the contribution made towards the organization? And that's what you're looking at as an individual. So what we're going to ask you to do is we're now going to walk the mat. We're going to do the exciting stuff now. This was a background for you to say, and what I'd like you to reflect on is, what does the future of a Cornerstone look like? Who am I, self-leader, within that? Who are we as a collective together? But that last statement was, how do we grow or amplify the strengths? To do that, each one of us individually need to know what our strengths are, and maybe a little bit of the dark side, the not so greats. And then in our groups, whether it's departments, divisions, sections, or overall, in any groupings or categories, what are our collective strengths? And then maybe the not so greats. So maybe if you look at the theory, it says that if you focus all of your attention on the not so greats, you have less than a 10% possibility of turning that around. But if you take your strengths and you amplify your strengths collectively, your strengths help to mitigate the not so greats. And your ability to actually grow those strengths, amplify them to get to the multiplication positive effect is so much greater than focusing on the not so greats. But self-leadership is about, remember self-confidence, self-awareness and self-confidence? Self-leadership is about being able to acknowledge to yourself and to your team or a group the not so greats. I do get irritated very quickly when you talk too long or when you take too long to get to the point. It's what you do with it that's critical, isn't it? I get irritated. Self-confidence says, you know what? I'm a person who gets irritated. It doesn't make it right. I'm not going to judge it, but it doesn't make it okay that I'm going to expect all of you just to bear with me when I get irritated. Self-leadership, I heard some of you saying regulation, is about me saying, I know I get irritated, but regulation and collective leadership says to me, you help me, please, not to demonstrate that irritation so badly. So when I do get irritated, will you bring it to my attention? And then when I take ownership and I regulate, I say, when I start feeling certain parts of my body warning me that irritation's on its way, then I start regulating and I start learning how to minimize that irritation or the way that I display that irritation so that it is not that experienced that negatively in terms of the collective leadership as such. So it's a two-way. We spoke about accountability and responsibility. It's two ways. What does that require? That requires of leadership or a self-leader to be that confident in your abilities that you're able to acknowledge the fact and say, these are my not-so-greats. Help me. I'll take ownership and a responsibility. I will regulate as best as I can. But you know what? Sometimes I just get caught out. It's in that meeting, in that situation. And before I know it, I'm there. But if we have that level of collaboration between us, I'm able to actually acknowledge, and the team is actually able to support me in that process. Yeah. So what are we going to ask you to do now is I'm going to ask you the first thing, we're going to walk the mat. And when we mean walk the mat, I want to tell you a little bit about when the Leadership Circle profile was introduced to you. It is a leadership tool. And it helps. We're not going to go through all the competencies and everything, not in this period of time, but I'm just going to break it into some easy component parts for you. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to ask you to think about which one of these is your superpower. You might be great at all of them, but I want you to choose one superpower. If we look at the Leadership Circle profile without focusing on the competencies, one of the first things we look at is if we look at this triangle here, which is the center one, number one there, and we look at this triangle here, it talks about authenticity. What it really says is, as a leader, one of the most critical things you're wanting to demonstrate is you want to demonstrate how grounded you are. And we talk about being grounded, we talk about, do you know who you are? Do you know what your purpose is? Do you know what your values are? What's important to you? And then when you interact, when you have relationships with people, you connect and you interact with people, how true are you to who you are? If you know who you are and what your values are, how true are you to your values and your purpose in your interactions with people? And how courageous are you? How authentic and how true and real are you? You know, it's one thing saying this is my purpose and these are my values, and then in the work environment, you're a totally different person. Yeah? And then people realize that. And that's when people say to you, hey, but there's two of you. Think about those of us who might say, oh, this is me at work and this is me at home. I want you to think twice about that because there's only one me. This is me in a different circumstance, but think twice about there's me at work because the work makes me behave in a certain way, and then there's me at home, and then I'm this wonderful person in the home situation. Authentically looking at who you are would minimize those extreme differences. Yeah? So my first question I'm asking you is, if we're looking at the number one, grounded in purpose, is that your superpower? Are you very clear, purpose-driven? And then do you behave consistently with who you are? So that people are not confused about who you are, but they can see who you are and what is important. And the way that you lead and the way that you interact is consistent. That's this first one. Remember, we're going to ask you to come and stand here. And then when we go to the right-hand side, which you can look at number 2 and number 3, this relates to, once you're grounded, we talk about relationship. Yeah? And there are 2 types of relationship. This part here talks about your relationship with yourself. That's leadership. That's the self-awareness. That's knowing who you are. That's knowledge about yourself and how you treat yourself and how you love yourself and how you, because once you've got purpose and you're grounded, then self-leadership and the regulation there becomes important. So it's your relationship with self. And then we talk about your relationship with others. But I'm going to ask you to do one measurement here. We're not going to do all two of them. So it's either purpose. What is your superpower? Purpose, being authentic in the way that I show up. People know who I am, and I am who I say I am. My relationships that I actually have, my relationships is my superpower. Or alternatively, if we go to 4 and 5 on this side here, this talks about to what extent you see the big picture. We can talk about strategic view and all of those good things, but just in layman's terms, do I see the big picture? Do I look ahead? And then this part of task is about, do I get things done? Am I known for the person who gets things done? Can I understand or set a vision? Am I clear about what the big picture looks like? And then can I actually get down there and get the job done? So this part here is what we talk about the task side. That's relationship. This is the groundedness in purpose and authenticity. And this is task. What I'm going to ask you to do is each one of you to get up and choose one of the 3 categories that you believe is your superpower out of those 3. So we can start task people, the I get things done people. Come and stand here for me, please. The I am anchored and grounded in purpose. My values and my purpose are very clear. And the way that I show up and the way that I lead, the way I communicate, the way that I relate is all grounded in a very clearly defined purpose. Is that my superpower? And then on this side is my ability to relate with myself and people around me is my superpower. It's what I bring. Yeah? One of those 3. So either queue up here or in the middle or in the side there. How we connect, relate, and interrelate with each other. And then the other side is our ability to have a strategic view, set a vision, and get the job done. What is our analysis? Now remember, this is an official leadership assessment tool that we are now doing in a very practical way right here. What is our leadership assessment tool telling us right now about the current Cornerstone team that we have here? What is our stats saying? No? No? We're not balanced, but how? Okay. If we had to do a rough assessment, we probably, collectively we have them all, but the absolute strength that we have currently in the Cornerstone leadership team is that we're incredibly strong on relating with self and with others. So our ability to engage the team, to care, to connect, to mentor, to coach, to support, all of that is a high percentage profile within our profile. But as we know, overall leadership, return on investment, leadership effective requires a great balance of all of those 3 main categories we've done. So second in the running, we have found that our ability to execute has come in. So we get the job done. As a leadership team, what we come up with is we come up slightly lower in terms of grounded in purpose, authenticity, and integrity, doing what we say that we're going to do. just a couple of suggestions quickly. How would we, if this is where we are at, remember each one of you as individuals could learn how to amplify what you have, and you could learn to grow some of the other competencies. You can develop them consciously, you can develop them. But as a collective leadership team, if this is who we are right now, how would we make sure that as a team we are balanced? Mm-hmm. How do we as a collective leadership amplify the strengths of the individual people so that as a collective team we balance out all three of the components? But we've got the strengths here. Integration within the team. Partner with each other. Yeah? If that is your superpower, and this is your superpower, how do I do more of this that's good for the team? But how do I share this with this team? And how does this team use their connectivity and their relationships to share more with the people who are more task focused? Yeah? And how do we demonstrate together more collectively authenticity? Yeah? Mm-hmm. With each other? Capacitate. So what is it? Imagine we were in a meeting. We use some of these meetings that we have. Imagine we just sat down in some of the meetings and said, this team may be saying, tell me a bit more about what are those natural ways in which you care and connect. How do I learn to demonstrate more caring and connection without losing my ability to get the job done? But how do I demonstrate some more caring and connection and mentoring support to the people I work with? And maybe vice versa. Remember, in leadership, there's an incredible danger when a leadership team is very strong on relationship and we're unable to execute. Because ultimately, as leaders, we are required to execute. We are required to deliver value to have.
So you asked us to choose one side.
Yeah.
So why don't we put everybody on this half? Because I'm sure some of them would want to be here and some of us would want to be there. So it's really kind of confusing. So we all stand where Roxanne is standing, I suppose. So to do that, we get to talk to each other, we get to learn from each other, etc. So I think maybe that would be what I'm thinking, how I'm seeing this. So in that group, there's a lot of people that can get the job done as well. And in this group, there's a lot of people that can do relationships. So bringing everybody on this half, talking to each other, saying, how do I do that? We get the best out of everybody. So it's just maybe, I find it a bit confusing. So
Okay. Remember our focus here, absolutely. Our focus is just to help identify. So what is the superpower, the thing that you do better than the other? Remember that there is, and I'm not using this as a marketing tool, just to let you know, if you actually had to go onto the Leadership Circle profile, the institution allows you to do a free assessment. So each one of you can take the link and you can actually go and do your own leadership profile. And what it's going to help you to do is to identify which ones come up as your big superpowers. It's rare that everyone is 100% on every dimension. It will help you to identify. I lean a little bit more towards execution. It may be on the relationship side, there might be some elements, and vice versa. It doesn't mean that you cannot deliver and that you're only good at relationship, but it helps you to see the relationship and where you particularly stand out in terms of where you're at. Okay. But now, if you look at it as an individual, you'll be saying to yourself, am I stronger on relationship? And what might I want to do to continue doing that? Help other people be strong at it. But what might I need to do to be more authentic and purpose-driven in the way that I show up? And what might I want to do to ensure that I don't allow, that I'm not executing as much as what I'm building relationships per se? Yeah, at an individual and at a collective level. If we're all very relationship focused, but we're not necessarily that execution focused, what does that mean for us as a leadership collective? How will we achieve what we need to do? Yep. Any other contributions?
Thanks. The choose one is actually on purpose, because what happens in real life is that when we're under pressure or things aren't going our way, we default to a preferred behavior. And so some of us would default to, we need to protect the relationship at all costs, whether we get something done or not. Or, excuse my language, screw you, let's just do this. And then in the doing, we destroy relationships. And what happens sometimes if we default into these, we may lose sight of the purpose. But why are we actually here? And the fact that we're executing, we may be executing, but not achieving the purpose. So I think the key is, and you're great, I mean, we've seen leadership teams that if they do this exercise, 9 out of 10 people are at task. The conflict in the team and the conflict they're causing in an organization is just, so you've got a good balance. I think that's something to recognize. And the question is, in all your engagements, in all your meetings, in all your strategy sessions, all your problem-solving conversations, how do we balance? How do we stay true to our purpose, still deliver on what we need to do, and in the process protect? So I think there's a gift here that you do have quite a good spread across all of them.
So let's just do a quick exercise because we've got a little bit of time left. So remember we spoke a little bit about the dark side, and Crispin spoke nicely about, when things get tougher, then we revert to a certain type of behavior. So many of us as leaders try to balance that as best as we possibly can. Although we might have a preference, we lean a little bit more to the one or the other, and we can do leadership development, and we can become more conscious, and we can consciously balance those out. But let's look at this. This bottom side of the circle talks about what we call reactive tendencies, or we like to use it like your bad leadership days. Think about you, and then think about the bad leadership days, the days when you are under extreme pressure, the days when you're really not doing well, when you're overwhelmed, when you really tense and anxious and things are really not going that well. Then, like it or not, you tend to go to a default. And that default or that reactive tendency comes from your upbringing, comes from whatever. You were taught from a very young age where to go, which is your safe place. And I'm not talking about a physical place. I'm talking about here or in your behavior, mannerisms, you've learned certain things. Either keep very quiet and don't be noticed, or else lash out and protect yourself, or whatever it might be. But when we're talking about is that you've learned certain reactive tendencies. It's connected to your brain. It's how do I make myself safe in places and circumstances when I am tense, anxious, overwhelmed, or whatever, where do I go to? If I'm a leader and I'm running a meeting and it's not going in the direction that I want to, and I'm feeling embarrassed or humiliated, and what do? Do I lash out, or do I try and disappear myself out of the situation? And that comes from natural. That doesn't make it wrong or right. That comes from being self-leadership and about knowing who you are and knowing your context and so forth. And just knowing what is your natural tendency to go into helps you to know yourself better and helps you when you share with people, for people to understand where you're coming from and possibly assist you by, if you're vulnerable and authentic, assist you to be able to move out of that phase. Think of a typical meeting. Who are the people that just don't say one word in a meeting? And then ask yourself, why? That's sitting here. Why? And then ask yourself, if we are collective leadership, then surely everyone's voice and everyone's contribution is valuable to our business. Then why would we have a person sitting in a meeting that doesn't say a word throughout? And some of us would say, well, it's their problem if they can't say what they need to say. The loudest must speak up. Or if we're collective leadership, we would say, what is causing that person not to either feel comfortable, whatever, to be able to make a contribution? And that's part of collective leadership. So if we had to look at that, there's sort of like three things. There are three main categories that really happens. The one is we talk about when you're having your not so great leadership day, the one thing we talk about is what we call complying. Some of us have learned that whenever we are in difficult situations, just go with the flow. Don't speak up. Don't say anything. Some of us have learned, I will do anything. I'm a people pleaser. I will do anything. Just as long as you're happy, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I just want to belong. I just want to feel part of the team. So I will say or do or vote for whatever you want as long as I can be part of the team. That's sort of a kind of an example of if we talk generally about a complying kind of behavior. So you're asking yourself, who, me? Am I a complying kind of a person? Do I want to go with the flow? Would I allow myself, or even if I had a certain opinion or an idea, would I rather keep quiet and go with the flow in order to be accepted and be involved in, or just stay with, not to stand out and stay with? The second area we have a look at, we talk protecting behavior. Those are those of us that feel the need to defend ourselves. We need to protect ourselves. And we either become very distant, we will totally withdraw from a situation. If someone humiliates me or attacks me or says something nasty to me or whatever, I will just totally and utterly distance myself from the situation and withdraw and make myself invisible. Versus I'm the one who would actually, the way I protect myself is I just criticize everything that you've got to say. So you want to come up with a different idea, suggestion, I'll tell you why it's wrong, why it can't work. So I'm in critical mode. I will always criticize everything someone else does. Or else I'll just be in arrogant mode. I'm highly qualified. I know best. I know better. Been there, done that. I could either use my age or I can use my status or I can use my qualification to say, and an element of arrogance can come in to actually say, I know, and I need to use that in order to protect myself. Remember, some people are not doing this. Remember, we're talking about reactive tendencies. And then we have the controlling behaviors. I just need to be in control. When I'm overwhelmed, I need to be in control of the situation. So the one way to do that is I'm a perfectionist. Nothing is ever good enough, ever, for me, or whatever you produce to me is just never good enough. So I'm driving perfectionism all the time. Or I'm highly driven. I just work and work and work and work 24 hours a day. And I expect people that I lead to work and work and work. And balance is not a word or a terminology in my life. So the way I feel in control of my life is the harder I work, the more I feel in control of my situation. Yeah? And then, of course, becoming very I don't have time to relate and collaborate and do all this caring stuff. Let's just get it done. Let me just tell you what to do and let's just get it done. And then let's work hard and let's be so perfect that you're never going to be able to achieve the results that I want from you anyway. I'm just doing a quick analysis here just to understand there is no judgment in this, right? Each one of us have some or a combination of these things. That's the truth. And you know which they are, right? You know what they are. But when you, one, acknowledge and know that this is my safe place that I go to, one, it's going to help you to regulate in terms of self-leadership. But two, this is, if ever you want to be a collective leadership and bind yourself together and actually have connectivity and actually have relationships, it's when you start understanding this about each other. Because this is where it doesn't become my problem to fix my perfectionism. It becomes an authentic, open discussion where you know and I know when I get highly anxious and tense, I become so perfectionistic, I become arrogant, I criticize absolutely everything that you're doing. And when you can say, hey, Jeanette, oh, you're having a stressful day, you break. You can break. You can help me break that chain, in terms of it. So can we see how important that knowledge is? Now, I know we're running out of time, but if you will allow me a couple of minutes, I would like you to be that bold that you are able to choose one of the three categories and stand there in terms of your reactive. Where's my safe place I go to, my reactive tendency? Is it conservative? Is it protective behavior? Or is it controlling behavior? Okay, everyone, as we know that we don't have the time to do this, hopefully this is, you're curious. And as we say, you are each welcome. You can do the actual full assessment around the whole competency level. You can do that, and the link can be sent to you. It's online on the website, and you can actually do the full detailed assessment if you like. But what have you noticed over here if you're looking at the reactive tendencies in terms of the balance or the spread? Hey? We've got a little bit of everything. Hey? Can we see that? We've got a little bit of everything. What is the biggest learning of this? One, there's no judgment. Because look at that. You and I can argue beautifully as to why it's so great to be perfect. Or perfectionism. Surely we need to aspire for high standards. But remember, when it sits at the bottom end of the circle, what it says is, when perfectionism gets to such a point that nobody can meet your standards, think about what it does to people on the relationship side. Have any of you experienced that? A leader that is so perfect that every report that I submit gets scratched on with the red marks and the what have you. How many of you have disengaged already and you're giving in a half-baked meeting report anyway because you know your leader's going to do it for you anyway? So why bother? Can you see? This is about understanding the implications of the reactive tendencies on the people around you as a leader. When I apply that behavior, it could potentially result in disengagement of people because they stop at some point because they're not able to meet your standards. Yeah? If I have a leader that is highly, highly critical and arrogant even, I will not make a suggestion or a contribution because I don't want to be humiliated in front of a whole lot of people to tell me how bad my suggestion or my idea was. But being critical is essential in certain fields and certain roles. But can we see, what are we learning about this? We're learning about how that is demonstrated and the impact that that has on people around you. So it's not about you're not allowed to be critical. It's about how you demonstrate the way in which you ask questions. So if you can change being critical to being curious rather, that would invite and elicit response from people. But when you're critical in the sense of everything you're doing is wrong, eventually I disengage and I stop from that. So the beauty as self-leadership, as well as collective leadership, is when we start realizing which of the reactive tendencies are we using when we interact with each other, individually and collectively, and how we can facilitate that differently so that people have different experiences of how we demonstrate that. They will actually see it being experienced in positive competencies in the way that we actually lead. Yeah? Crispin? You happy? All right. Any questions from anyone? This was so fast. Really, really so fast. But the summary of this was, in self-leadership, it's about self-knowledge. It's about knowing what are my superpowers. It's about knowing which are some of those darker moments, per se. And it's about how I regulate those, not take them away. I mustn't learn how not to do that stuff. I must learn how to accept the fact that I have that in me, but that I display it or demonstrate it differently, so it's experienced differently by people around me. Okay? There was a question?
Have multiple personalities?
No, not multiple personalities. But remember, an important thing about this is, the beauty of this is, number one, it's a snapshot in time, and it is contextually driven. So as a leader, you might find that in different circumstances or contexts, certain behaviors are pulled out of you or certain behaviors come to the fore in a particular environment. That's why you sometimes possibly say, oh, but when I'm at Cornerstone, I'm this kind of person. And when I'm at home, I'm that kind of person. We all say, no, I'm this person when I'm at work, and I'm this person when I'm at home. But sometimes we get the shock of our lives when we interview our children and the others and our spouses and that, and they say, this person you're describing is not the one that we experience. Yeah? Remember, it's all about the experience of the person on the other side, because you might intend to behave or come across in a particular way, but you are experienced differently. And you might be saying, but I'm caring and I'm connecting and I'm really interested in getting things done. And then people will actually be describing those behaviors. And then you realize, okay, the way in which I'm demonstrating what is a good or a pure intent, the way I'm demonstrating it is coming across differently. Think about that. When someone disengages in a meeting and doesn't speak the whole time, what is your assumption about them? They're not interested, they're tired, they don't care. You don't know, if you don't, as a leader, introspect that, you don't know that that person has been shut down and humiliated so many times that they've learned. The reactive tendency behavior they've learned is, just don't shine. Just don't draw attention to me. But for collective leadership, that person might have the most brilliant contribution to that vision of Cornerstone going forward. But you're not getting the benefit of that because a reactive tendency, either we force that person into that situation where they're uncomfortable to actually contribute, we're losing out on wonderful opportunities or contributions that the person can do. So ultimately, self-leadership, awareness, and then two, collective leadership is when we're willing to create a safe environment and in space where people can reveal why they go to those places in a safe kind of environment. And when we use our positive competencies to draw out the positive in people is when we're really going to have that multiplication effect where we are better together. Yeah? I think that's about all we've got time for. Thanks, everyone.
Just before you run, one second. And what's lovely about this is when you start recognizing it. I was working with a couple the other evening. He's a CEO. Wasn't therapy. We were just having a conversation. And you'd expect this kind of behavior. And then his wife was saying, I think we should. And he said, yes, honey, whatever you want. It's just that vocabulary you can hear where a person is. If you're intuitive as a leader and you have conversation, you'll hear from the vocabulary of your people where they are on this mat. And that awareness is really great. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, everybody, I hope that was really, really interesting for yourself as an individual, but also for yourself within the team that you serve, and then for yourself within the teams that you work with. Whether you work with them every day or occasionally, I think what this does allow, I'm sure this is going to be branded in our memories for a very long time now, is to give yourself or give ourselves the permission to remind ourselves. Jeanette did say it earlier on. If you see me having a bad leadership day, if you saw where I stood on the mat, you have the permission to say, oh, it's easy, bad leadership day, no? Don't make her feel bad. It's just we're giving each other permission. The invitation is out there to say, in whichever way you want, bad leadership day, then Zizi knows, okay, she's going to take a break, or whatever she's going to do to come around again. Okay. And that's for each and every one of us. Okay, so I want to call Basid. Basid is going to give us a little snapshot overview of the board meeting, couple of highlights.
Afternoon, everyone. Just a quick overview. We had our first board meeting on Friday, Friday past, and so from the board, first thing is thank you to everyone at Cornerstone, not just the leadership. Everyone at Cornerstone for taking it forward with the big changes that we had in this year. They're very proud of how all of us came together and made it work for Cornerstone, and I'm looking forward to what's happening into the future at Cornerstone. So some technical things from the board meeting, the registration numbers as usual. We're still registering at the moment. We almost at the target that was set by the board and not set by my arrogant leadership part, me. So the board said we're almost there, and I think we can get there. I promised them. I know I spoke to some of the registration team this morning. And on last year's financials, we presented those financials, and we have a clean audit, and Cornerstone, we didn't do too bad financially. So thank you for that as well. And just whatever happens into the future, the board is there for us as well. So if there's anything that we need to change, we want to talk about, that's all. They gave their support to Cornerstone. On strategy, they do want us to have our strategy ready by August, end of August, 1st September in other words. What we've done, we've started the strategy in participation in February, I think, or March, roundabout there. March, sorry. And then, so now the next step is for us to present the strategy to the entire organization, get inputs, get buy-in, and then take it again to the board just for approval. So that was what we left. This type of thing that we're doing, we also mentioned that. So this is all part of that change and that change management that we talked about at our previous or last staff meeting, and stabilizing this organization to be the future of higher education, private higher education. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Okay, so I think what I'm really excited about is, Basid mentioned some of it, but what is nice and what is comforting for me is I know Cornerstone has been through many, many, many changes well before I got here. 2015, probably the most significant one. And then constantly, there's stuff in between. I'm just going to jump over that. Right now, we have technological improvements. Where's our tech people? Constantly, every day, all day. Okay, and that affects every single one of us. And that's not going to go away. But what the board does acknowledge, and just in the conversations that I was listening to, was there's a lot more, not a lot more, what I heard was a lot of conversations around people and taking people along with you. And that for me is a truly, truly comforting, what's the word I'm looking for? Stance or position to be in. Okay. So Basid has asked me to make a little announcement, and I will do so. So please could we, I'm not sure what to do, shall we just give Marianne a round of applause? She's been very successful in securing the role of the Executive Dean. Thank you. And I know that people might be waiting to hear a lot more about some of the structural changes that have not yet been announced, or maybe you've heard and it hasn't been formally communicated. It will happen. So today's staff meeting experience was absolutely based on what came out on the 31st of May. And for the other information that we're used to getting at the staff meeting, remember people would come and speak to us. All of the senior management team members would speak to us. They'll give us a rundown of their reports. That hasn't gone away. It's just a little different. So you're going to get it in a hard copy so that you always have access to it. So all of everybody, all the HODs would normally give us a rundown. It's not gone. It's just absent from this particular session here today, or this 2 hours, but you'll, by the end of this week, I think, you'll be able to give you one nice PDF that you can always just refer back to that. And I think, please, if you would thank our special guests, our givers, our gifts. I feel like you are a gift of the givers in a different way, in a very different way. It's not often that we have people who see, not opportunity in the way that you understand, or the way that I'm making it sound now, but they see what we see. Okay, they see in Cornerstone what we see in Cornerstone. And so with that, there goes that gentleman. I'm supposed to do a special thing for him. But see, okay. All right, so I'm going to say it in his absence. So he turns 50 tomorrow. So if you guys would all just join me in singing a happy birthday song for him. But this also is at the same time for people who are or have had a birthday in July or are going to have a birthday in July, that you're not going to be excluded from that. Those goes to people online as well. So when he comes back, we'll just sing a happy birthday song if that's okay. Yeah? Thank you so much. We're going to wait for him to come back. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, we're going to do the fast happy birthday one, okay? Goes like this. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. And happy birthday to everybody else at Cornerstone who is celebrating. Have a wonderful day, everybody.